evening and welcome to the St. Pete by Night Twitch channel where we play St. Petersburg by Night, a massive multiplayer 5th edition World of Darkness Chronicle set in the city of St. Petersburg, Florida. My name is Kent, also known as Misha Kent on all social media. I am the lead storyteller of St. Pete by Night, but because it's Saturday night, I get to play the role of host. Because this is After Dark. It's our behind the scenes program where we talk to players, we talk to storytellers, we talk to members of the community, but more importantly, we get to talk to some of the movers and shakers of the world of darkness at large. And I am so pleased this evening to be joined by one of those movers and shakers who I will be introducing in just a moment. First, though, go follow us on St. Pete by Night on all the social media listed down below and in the description. And if you're a fan of the World of Darkness and you want to learn more, or you want to get involved, or maybe you haven't even dipped your toes in the pool of the World of Darkness before, you can do so by joining our community. There is a link down below. It's discord.gg/St. Pete by Night, where you can get into the game, you can learn the rules, you can get involved with one-shots, maybe even join a table, and maybe we'll even see your amazing face on one of our streams in the future. But for now, let's get to our incredible guest. Tonight, our guest is NephthysNile, who you may know from a variety of projects, especially the Ichor and Ink channel, which we're going to be talking about at great length tonight. But to learn more about Nephthys, you just have to head to NephthysNile.com. There's all of the details there. It's an incredible website. It's so clean and so good looking, and I'm going to talk about that a bunch more as well. But let's get to letting our guests introduce themselves. Hi, Nephthys. Take it
Hi, I'm
away.
NephthysNile. Hey, how you going? I'm quite clearly an Australian storyteller. I try to not do too many Australianisms, but sometimes they slip out. Yes, I am one of the storytellers and players of Ichor and Ink, a horror TTRPG collective full of creatives who want to bring all the spooky to your screens. I am also secondary storyteller, cast member, and epilogue storyteller for Red Centre by Night. And I am a storyteller for Vampire the Masquerade at conventions predominantly.
Well, and that is fantastic and such great timing because, as we were talking about earlier, I just wrapped up telling stories at Gen Con a couple weeks back, and it's great to. That's something we can go into greater depth about because it was my first time ever doing it. In fact, it was my first ever convention ever. And so it was a
Wow.
very intense experience, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. I want to say too that this was such a great get for our show After Dark because we've talked to people in Europe, we've talked to people in the U.S. This is going to be our first real Australian, professional storyteller experience. One of our storytellers is from Australia, Cole, who we've gotten to talk to before, but talking outside of the server, this is a really huge opportunity for us. So I want to thank you first and foremost for taking the time to join us and do this pre-recorded interview. So I'm very grateful for that. But let's get into it with a very important first question, which is how did you discover TTRPGs? When did they come across your radar? When did you learn about them? And did you have any preconceived notions about them before getting involved?
Oh, that is such a good question. So I actually quite literally stumbled into TTRPGs by way of LARP. So I was a little baby bat goth walking the streets of Perth, Western Australia. Um, Missed my train, meandering through, going, well, now I've got 3 hours to kill because public transport isn't a thing in Western Australia, or at least it wasn't back then. And stumbled upon a bunch of like dressed goths and went, huh, my people, I have found them. And then held back for a little bit because I didn't recognize any of them. Saw that they had fangs. I'm like, no, that's cool. I'm down with that. Yeah, they've all got fangs. They're all speaking funny. What are they? What, rock, paper, scissors? Okay, what the hell is actually going on here? Um, and went up to one of the people wearing a storyteller's badge and went, okay, I need all of the details, info dump on me, do it now. I need to be in on this. Um, And then because I lived in the country, I couldn't attend. So I voraciously read everything that I could, spending all of my weekends in a tiny little game store underneath St. George's Terrace, and reading all of the the Masquerade books that they could get. I went back to high school, could not find anyone who would do this vampire thing with me. Harassed some guys, got into Magic the Gathering, got into D&D, became the girl in the room, and the obnoxious girl at that. And then finally started running some games, started off with D&D, as so many of us do, because the first taste is free, right?
Always.
Yeah, and then became a parent. So left the world of TTRPGs because, we're serious parents and we have to
Of
do
course.
serious things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Can't
not an
possibly have
adult
fun.
thing to do, to play role-playing games. Absolutely not.
No,
Well,
no. And then, yeah, my daughter started to get a little bit older, could do her own thing. And I'm like, I still got some of those books. I should totally read them. And uphill or downhill from there. I haven't quite decided which way I've gone.
well, I love that Vampire the Masquerade and the World of Darkness was your entry point into
Mm,
TTRPGs, because I've talked to a lot of people, I've asked them all the same question, and it's always a variety of responses. There's always incredible, stories that go with it, but a lot of them came into TTRPGs through D&D. That was kind of the access point for most people, and I think that's pretty, understandable, as it's been the mega machine of TTRPGs
mm.
forever. But I love that World of Darkness, and let alone LARP, was your access point to TTRPGs as a whole, which is absolutely incredible. And that is the deep end of the pool, jumping into a World of Darkness LARP first thing, and
Go
then
hard
kind
or
of
go home. There is no other way about it.
absolutely, absolutely, and that's incredible. So you said you got into D&D. D&D was kind of your first actual playing experience. You did a lot of research and reading. You couldn't get involved or in any games before that, but you did start with D&D. What was your favorite class, or what was your first class?
I am a rogue main. Yeah, yeah. But I do also play fighters. I
Yep,
feel like they're a bit underrated, but I do love them. But yeah, rogues have a special place in my heart. They always will.
always. Always. What do you remember about that first campaign? I'm always interested to hear the stories, of how this kind of hooked you. How did you get involved? What made you stay involved? Because if you had a bad experience your first time, that might shy you away. But there was something about that caught you. So what do you remember about that first campaign?
I remember quite literally just sitting in the corner of the room, snacking away on my lollies or whatever it was while they were playing, and me just going, what why are you doing that? And then slinking back to my corner, and just over, I think, the course of maybe 3 months, encroaching on their table just a little bit more, until eventually they gave up and just went, oh, for crying out loud, just come to the table and roll up a character sheet, just do it.
You've been here long enough.
So,
It's your turn to get involved.
yeah, pretty much. Someone couldn't make it, so I think that's why they let me play their character first and then rolled up my own character. I remember being completely overwhelmed. I am not a math person by any stretch of the imagination, and having to suddenly do all these modifiers and look at all these different dice and just go, I have absolutely no idea what's going on, but we'll make it work somehow. Seems to be the motto of my life. I never really quite know what's going on, but I just do what I can with what I've got.
Absolutely. My access point to TTRPGs was a D&D. So with THACO and everything like that, and I hated it, but I
Oh,
loved the role playing aspect of it also. I was like, I'll learn it, I'll figure it out, and I'll keep doing it, but I hate this.
yeah.
And yeah, that's totally understandable about the math thing, but that's one of the things, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. World of Darkness makes a lot easier, but we'll again get into
Mm.
that. What could you tell me about the Australian gaming environment? Because I'm from America, I've been in America my whole life, and I know that there are a lot of similarities between our gaming societies, across the board. But there's also a lot of cultural differences in, the places we live and where we grow up. What could you describe the Australian gaming community to me as best as you can based off your experience?
Sure. Well, similarities. Let's start off that way. Uh, Definitely male oriented and dominated field. That is coming to change.
Very much so.
Yeah, it was predominantly seen as very geeky, very nerdy. We don't talk about that in mainstream culture, and was very much something you did in the basement at your mum's house. I was very, very lucky in that I grew up in rural Western Australia, and so they were always keen at school to really try and engage people to make sure that they weren't, roaming the streets causing havoc.
Right.
Some of us still found our way to havoc. But anyway, it's a story for another night. But yeah, so my particular high school managed to foster a really keen sense of whatever they want to do, let's keep them at school. But I know that a lot of people growing up in the 80s and the 90s just didn't have that. Um, and that's kind of been the way that it's been until dun 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 COVID hit. Now, Australia is very sparsely populated. We've got a few centres where there's a lot of people, but there's big stretches between population centres. And so as gaming went online, I think we really embraced that because historically we've had a massive issue with getting to face sessions. And so, in putting another hat on for a second, president of Dungeons and Dragons Australia, we actually have seen that a lot of the major renaissance for D&D has been facilitated by that shift of just everything going online during COVID, and really hasn't turned back since. While, we're no longer in lockdowns or anything like that, and we're able to attend cons and events here and there, we are still seeing that a lot of games are being facilitated online still, simply because it breaks down the barriers to entry and it means that more people can attend more games. We see a lot of groups who are starting to run one-shot weekends. So, again, that first taste is free kind of thing. And the knowledge sharing around, oh, have you tried this TTRPG? Have you read this book? Is rampant because it costs a lot to ship stuff to Australia,
Yes, we've
and
experienced
we're
that a lot with.
already paying more.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It really is. If someone comes up with a cheap, easy way to actually ship physical items, they will corner the market in Australia. I can tell you that now.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting that you brought up the pandemic because I feel like the pandemic, like you said, was a renaissance for TTRPGs
Mm,
as a whole. I mean, Stephen Colbert coined the phrase "in the dungeon" to describe the old days of D&D fandom or TTRPG fandom, in the
yeah.
fact that it was kind of like a shameful secret or a guilty pleasure that you didn't let your cool friends know about unless you were going to get labeled
Mm,
a nerd or something like that. But now, because of the pandemic, I feel like it really just busted open the that dungeon, so to speak, to the point that it's not only culturally accepted, it's promoted, it's loved. Things like Critical Role, Dimension 20, LA by Night, shows like that are very popular, and it's
mm,
become so mainstream that it's not a shameful secret anymore. Like you can say I play in D&D and someone else will be like me too, and it's not a weird thing to be open about. And I'm so glad to see that that is globally kind of the case, that it has become an overall thing that everyone has embraced and accepted and is proud to wear that freak flag, as it were, of being, a TTRPGer. And that seems to have reflected in your own experience as well as in the area that you've been in, and that's amazing. So talk to me about D&D Australia, being the president of that. How did that happen? How did that whole story get told? Because this is a departure from just I sat in the corner eating sweets and commenting on someone's game to now I'm like spearheading all of my country's D&D efforts. Like, how did that journey happen?
Um, Accident, like most things in my life. I started working with a friend who's a very good friend now, who was the previous lead admin for the group. It started as a Facebook group. I was just trying to connect dungeon masters with group players and facilitate knowledge sharing, that sort of a thing. And life happened as life does, and he needed a break. So he said, "Hey, you've done community management, you've done social media management. Can I just hand the reins over to you and you just keep this thing ticking along?" And 2 weeks later, we had started discussions about becoming a not for profit organization.
Hmm.
Um, over the course of, I feel like it's the last 2.5 years, we went from a member base of about 2,500 people to today we are getting very, very close to 11,000 people.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
we are now a
incredible.
not-for-profit organization, and we are being invited to conventions to run D&D for people as a if you've never tried it, come and try it. Our next huge barrier is actually getting state representatives all across Australia, again, to try and break down some of those barriers. And yeah, hopefully spread the good word of TTRPGs and D&D all
Well,
throughout Australia.
and that's absolutely incredible because I know we have an Australian player base, within our community, but also that
Mm.
reaches out to other communities. So I want to transition here very briefly to talking about that you have a link tree where people can go and join this particular, D&D community on Facebook and probably get hooked up with all of that. So if you head over to Linktree, NephthysNile, you can find a link right in there that allows you to join Australia's friendliest D&D community on Facebook and get involved with all that. So if you are in Australia and you want to find your people, this is a great opportunity to do so by going over to that link tree and just clicking the link to join that community. I know this is a World of Darkness channel, so we should probably talk about World of Darkness, but I think it's
Yeah,
all
maybe.
one in some way. So what was your first real World of Darkness experience as a player? Not that you ran into people, that were of similar your people, so to speak, but when you created your first character, what was that like for you? What did you create? And what was that whole overall experience?
Okay, so the first character I created, I did not ever get to play. I know. Um, until 20 years later.
Wow, okay. All right. So that
Yeah,
that
I held
stuck
on to
with you.
her.
Yeah,
Yep,
absolutely.
yep. My very first character was a Cappadocian who survived the purge and basically hid underground somewhere in Australia, who knows where, because no one was here and all the fighting and inroads that were happening to the whole Sabat Camarilla struggle, she just slept through, basically. And then, yeah, 20 years later, she pops up in Melbourne, and I had transitioned I think, revised edition character into V5. I finally got to play my girl. And her very first act was to diablerize a Giovanni because she was like, these guys,
Fuck these guys
oh,
in
these guys.
particular.
Yep, yep. Which may have set her on a path of notoriety in Melbourne. Yeah, yeah. But my first actual character was a Toreador. I wanted to play her as a daughter of cacophony, but I can't sing, so that was not going to happen.
Understandable. Understandable. Especially if you're one of those players who really leans into like trying to embody the character as best as possible. I can't sing either, so I understand that limitation, even though I've played Toreador singers in the past. It's just like, they sing really good. Let me roll some dice to prove it, because I'm not going to
Yep.
actually try. But that's incredible. And I think the Toreador are a really good access point. Toreador, Ventrue, Bruja. You can't go wrong with those
Mm,
three clans as access points to the World of Darkness, because while you can get more complicated with them, while you can add nuance and you can add specificity, on a very base level, I think there's something about those three clans that we can all identify with. Anybody can identify with,
absolutely.
whether it's the artist, whether it's the rebel, whether it's the, you know, A-type personality or control freak. You can find something to like about that that will then eventually branch out into the more intricate or complicated clans out there, like the Hecata
Mm.
slash Cappadocian slash Giovanni slash on and on and on and on and on that whole clan is. What would you say is your favorite clan and why?
Um, oh, I
It's a
love all of
tough
my
question.
babies.
I know. As a storyteller, it's a
Um,
very tough question.
yeah, I would probably have to say Hakata, just because of the complexity of the bloodline and the overall story from
Yes.
Cappadocius through to today with whatever the hell is going on with them.
Yeah, the family reunion and every like they have one of the most intricate overall clan stories. Now, some clans have individual people that have very interesting stories, but as a clan, the journey the
Yeah.
Hecata have been on overall is absolutely incredible and has so many great twists and turns and intrigue and I don't think any clan can compare in terms as a whole group for a story versus like individual stories within that group. It's a really really good choice. What is a
Yeah.
clan you've always wanted to play as a player but never had the opportunity to? Because as storytellers, we kind of get to dip our toes in every clan, but as a player, you really have to focus your efforts on that character in that clan. Is there a clan you haven't played but want to?
That's a really good question. I'm going through all of my player characters
Mm-hmm.
now.
I
Um,
mean, you may have even tried it but didn't get to play it for very long and would love to revisit it. I'd count that as an answer too.
La Sombra.
Really? Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the Ookie Spooky kids. And the ruthlessness of them. I'm not a particularly ruthless person unless someone gets in my way when there's a book sale on.
Oh my
That's
goodness,
when it
no.
comes to the fore. Yeah.
No way. Absolutely
um,
not.
but they are, I love the struggle between the I want what I want and I get what I want, and the I have to play nicely with others, which means sometimes giving up a little bit of control, or at least appearing to.
Yes. Yes. I love to compare them to the dark side of the Ventru coin. Like if you look at the Ventru on one side, they're very front facing, they're very we're in charge and we want everyone to know we're in charge. But the Lasombra have a lot of those qualities as well, except they like to be the vizier behind the throne, who's the real power, even if they're not necessarily always the face of the operation or whatever the case may
Mm,
be. And I think that yeah, it's like Ventru with extra steps, but in a good way, like with a dark
yeah,
shadow cast over them. And I love 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 the Lasombra. What
they're the
clan?
worm
Oh yeah.
tongue, really.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
the worm tongue. Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
What clan do you think is the most overrated? Because there are clans that get a
Ventru.
lot. Ventru.
Ventru.
Okay, why?
Um, because they're pathetic. Their ploy for power is so obvious. Like, oh my God.
Oh my god.
Um, like, don't get me wrong. Like you said earlier, I think they're a great entry point,
Mhm.
and they definitely have a place in the world of darkness. That place is probably not where they think they should be at the top of the ladder. But I feel like um if you're playing a Ventru, you really need to do your research in order to bring a deeper dimension to the character. And if you're not a strong role player, or if you're just interested in playing, not necessarily so invested in your game, um, yeah, you show up, you play your character, and you go away. To me, Ventru aren't the characters that stick with you. And I know I've just made some real lifelong enemies right there.
Well, I mean, I think that those who get invested in Ventru get really invested in Ventru. They like the bloodlines, they like the lore, they like the bureaucracy and the politics of it. But I think that for a lot of people, if you're not that type of person, if you're not interested in really getting into the intricacies of bureaucracy, it can come off very flat or fall flat with you, and it's very easy. It's a pitfall to make a one-dimensional Ventru because you really are just like, I like business, I wear suits, I talk like I'm better than you. Like that's on the base level, yes, all those things
Mm,
can fall in a Ventru character, but I think that there is so much more that goes into it. We have some very, very talented Ventru on our server, so Ventru players who are watching this, don't hate us for talking about it this way. But yeah, I think that more often than not, I see that Ventru characters don't last long because I think the players get bored. They don't know how to further develop that character or further embody that character. It kind of gets stuck and
mm,
stagnant after a while, where there are a lot of opportunities that are bred into other clans more obviously that allow for more complexity and more La Sombra is a great one. Like a lot of people that I see start as Ventru eventually transition to La Sombra because La Sombra has that dark shadow cast and that kind of like mischievous nature to it, as well as the history with the Sabbat and all that. But we could get into that later. But that there's more to it. There's more to sink your teeth into, pun intended, with the La Sombra on paper than it seems like there is
mm.
with the Ventru. So it takes a very determined player to play a Ventru with as much gravitas and as much depth and character development as is required for
Mm.
that clan. So I totally
And I
agree with it.
think a very strong relationship with your storyteller
Mm-hmm.
as well, because you don't necessarily need to know what's going on behind the scenes that hasn't been brought to the front of the camera, so to speak. But to have that open dialogue with your storyteller and go, "Hey, I'm feeling like I'm lacking a little bit. I read this," or "What do you think about?" I think, Ventru being a good entry point, sometimes perhaps new players will pick them as a clan and not necessarily feel like they can go to their storyteller and go,
Right.
"Hey, I'm not really enjoying this the way I thought I would. What can we do?" Or "I want more. What can you do for
Yeah.
me?"
Do you have any
And I
advice or
think,
suggestions as to where I can
yeah.
take this character or how I can best utilize this character? Absolutely.
Exactly. I think the piece of advice that I try to give all new players of any TTRPG is talk with your storyteller, your GM, your DM. They want you to have a good time. So if you're not having a good time, they're going to work overtime to help you have a better time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if you have a storyteller that doesn't foster that, that's not a game you want to play in. If you have a
Get out of there.
storyteller who's gonna shut you down, not answer your questions, not work intimately with you to make sure you are having the best time possible, they're not a good storyteller. A lot of those types of storytellers are usually there to just show off or play favorites or whatever the case may be. There are plenty, and I do mean plenty, of good storytellers, DMs, GMs out there who are the right type of DM or GM. Don't let one bad DM ruin the experience for you because you got the wrong one. You know what I mean? Like it's like
100%.
dating. Dating and
Yes.
TTRPG is a lot alike. You got to find the people you have chemistry with. You got to find the people that work for you because they are out there. I promise you that. But that is a very valid and good point that you're bringing up. Work with your DMs and your storytellers for sure. That being said, you eventually decided to make the, some might say insane, some might say courageous decision to become a storyteller. And that does require a level of confidence, but also a level of daring to take on that feat because it's not easy and it's not for the faint of heart. What prompted you to take it that step further, to say, I've been a player, but I want to take it even further? What made you decide to do that?
Um, I collected all the books and went, "Oh God, I have spent way too much. I need this to be a tax write-off."
I need to find a
Is
way to make this
basically
worth it.
it. Yeah, yep, yep. Oh, that might have come secondary. I was writing and making characters and didn't have games to put them in because I was still playing my Cappadocian and having an absolute ball with her. But had all these characters that I'm like, oh, I want to see what they would do in this situation. And then went, well, what if we just made our own situations? and started writing stories, and then was writing one shots, and then got commissioned to write a one shot for an organization, and went,
Wow.
okay, um, sure, I can do this. Again, stumbling into it. And quite literally downhill from there. So I started writing one shots, and then was asked if I would record that one shot, and then was asked would I run that one shot as a weekend for a bunch of people who could just book in. So I ran 3 days of one shots from 9 a.m. in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. That baptism of fire.
Yeah.
I did so overriding theme through my life. And then from there, got asked to run it for Melbourne International Games Week, and so on and so forth. And now I am in a pattern of behavior where I write at least one shot rather, for a year's worth of content. So I write it, I record it, I run it at least two conventions, sometimes more, and then it goes into rotation in my usual monthly one shots.
So let's talk about that, the convention storytelling experience, because as I mentioned at the beginning, I had my first, and I've been running the game for 30 plus years, but even that couldn't prepare me for the experience that was running at a convention with an entirely group of strangers, with a set time limit, with all these kind of restrictions and expectations, but also just games upon games happening all around me, so I have to adjust for the volume and everything like that. It is a completely different experience. What has
Mm.
the experience been like for you? You know, what surprised you about it? What did you like? What didn't you like? Like, what was that like? Because that is a true baptism by fire. I was running
Oh
alongside
yes.
people who were running their first ever World of Darkness game versus me, who's run hundreds of World of Darkness games. What was that like for you, being thrown into the deep end like that?
Exhausting. Wholeheartedly heartwarming, but exhausting. I had been to conventions. I started going to PAX Australia, oh God, 2 years after it started, in Australia, but nothing prepared me for running at PAX. I had done a smaller convention, at earlier in the year, but that, even though the noise levels were still higher than I was normally used to, yeah, that it was a lot. It was a lot. And you think you might be a good storyteller, but yeah, convention storytelling is something else. The noise levels, the constant schedule, the okay, I've got 20 minutes between my game. I have to eat, I have to go to the bathroom. Bathrooms are 15 minutes away. Can I order food and then go to the bathroom and then come back and collect it in time, wolf it down in 2 minutes, and then get back to my table and pray that I don't have parsley stuck in my teeth? Can I do it?
Absolutely.
The dehydration, the overstimulation from just everything, and still trying to maintain some sort of semblance of compassionate storytelling, because you don't know who's going to come to your
No.
table. You don't know what their previous experience is. You have to explain everything. And I guess the mental gymnastics that needs to happen, because you have quite literally 10 to 30 seconds to gauge the experience level and the buy-in level of the people at your table. And you go, okay, well, I've written this entire one shot that could take 3 hours. I've got 90 minutes. What portion of this am I going to throw at these guys? What rules am I going to throw out because they're not going to be able to get that? Are we going to deal with humanity? Probably not, unless they do something egregious or tick me off. And then, oh, yeah, we're doing humanity, baby. Um, and also trying to maintain a safe, welcoming space for everybody. Um, it's it's a lot.
It's a balancing act for sure. It really,
Mm.
really is. And I admire anybody who does it regularly like yourself, because even after this first time, I'm like, man, could I do that again? Probably. Am I going to? I have no idea. Like, I'm still recovering, and it's been, several days at the time of this recording since I did it, but there's also things like con crud and, it's
Oh,
illnesses that go around. You're sharing space with strangers, and like you said, with varying experience levels. So you're teaching the game, or potentially having to like keep a group cool because half of them are experienced and half of them aren't, and trying to make sure everybody's having the same level of enjoyment and fun
mm,
when you know that there are differences in preference, there are differences in lines and veils and safety tools. It's it's a lot. I definitely recommend, if you're gonna do it, make sure you have the game under your belt before you do it, because it can be very, very overwhelming and intimidating, especially for someone who is themselves new to the game and being put into that position. Uh, but yeah, do you have any interesting stories, particularly from a particular convention or a particular moment, where you feel like it went really, really well or went really, really badly? Like any interesting stories coming out of that? I'm sure you got hundreds, but one
absolutely.
that sticks out.
Oh, so I normally use my progression through the year to play test scenarios and go, I'm not sure about this. Will they go left? Will they go right? And then kind of bake those options into the story that I'm writing, so that when another storyteller picks it up, I've at least given them some, this might happen, so you can do this options. The This year I foolishly forgot that I had submitted an application to run a game on another platform. Thanks, Nerdsmith. I was on holiday when I got the email, and I'm like, okay, cool. I don't remember submitting this. I don't have a story written. I just, why am I sending this email? I said I'd do it in February. It's January. I've got 3 weeks to write this damned thing. Ah! So I wrote it, we recorded it. I think we did it in about a 6-week period, which is the fastest turnaround. No play testing. Like, the recording was my play test. April, I ran it again and got a bunch of other scenarios that I did not think players would go for. And then I ran it again for a bunch of friends, and they had seen what had happened at the con. They had seen the recording, and they're like, well, we know what to throw at you. And just curveball after curveball after curveball. It was relentless. It was 3 hours of the hardest, most grueling storytelling I have ever done. And this was family and friends. And I hate them and love them for it, because now when I go to PAX in October, I have every potential situation nailed down. If anyone wants to throw me a curveball, I'm like, done it.
Got you.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. If anyone is going to throw you for a loop, it's going to be family and friends. 100% of the time. Yeah,
But they're
yeah. But
also the
it
best
was,
critics too, because they're going to be
oh,
honest with you. They're going to be completely blunt about what they like, what they don't like, what they think is boring or should change. And while yes, there are a difference in preferences, what one person likes another person won't, but they are going to at least be honest with you and not just give you the pacifying, "Oh, it's so great." Like, they'll tell you, "Hey, this
oh, I had
sucks,"
a
or "This
really
is
fun
good." Yeah,
time.
exactly. Like,
Thanks.
it's a really, really good way to test your material, is if you have those types of friends or family, those are the people you want to target to try things.
Absolutely. My sister and sister-in-law have absolutely no compunctions about telling me exactly what they think.
So I want to go back to something that you said earlier, that TTRPGs are primarily a male-dominated field, and that is
Hmm.
still a struggle to this very day, although it is changing and that there is progress
Mm.
being made. What was it like being femme presenting, coming up in the TTRPG world, and what were some struggles that you felt like you encountered and had to overcome? And what kept you doing it? Because it must be exhausting. Like, if you run into resistances like that and stuff like that, it's, yeah, I can never understand. I can never truly understand. But I think this is a good platform and an opportunity to talk about your experience, because I know that there are plenty of others still dealing with that, or still struggling with that, or may have even been deterred by that, that could be inspired by your story, because you've made quite a successful go of it. uh President of D&D Australia, all of this World of Darkness accomplishment. Yeah, just tell your story as far as how that went.
Awesome. Um, First of all, thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Yes, I definitely had a bunch of really terrible experiences that absolutely turned me off TTRPGs and gaming in general. Um, the second D&D game that group that I ever turned to, I did 2 sessions before I left in absolute tears, vowing to never play D&D ever again. I was the only woman at the table. I was denigrated. I was made to feel less than. I was just the cleric, so fucking heal me. And it was not even an experience that I came away from going, you know what? Okay, there's people like that. I'm going to rise above it. I was just absolutely floored by the audacity of some people and the fact that they thought that that was appropriate behavior, even back then. Um, and yes, to some degree, that continues on a daily basis. Being femme presenting, I know that there is a portion of the community out there who feel like maybe I don't have um, as justified a place telling my stories and running games and being a face as they might. And to them, and with the backbone of a 40-plus-year-old woman, I go, "Mm, screw you. I'm here. You're not getting rid of me. And I have a voice and I'm going to use it for maybe people who can't use theirs. So screw you. If that's your attitude, you don't have a place in this community because you suck. You suck as a
Absolutely.
human being and you suck as a player and a GM. Go away, learn what it is to be a good person, and then come back and we'll see whether or not we've got a place at the table for you."
Well, and it's also been proven, even in World of Darkness especially, that it can be a very, very predatory place for femme and femme presenting as well. People, World of Darkness LARPs, especially in the 90s, got a horrible reputation for being places where, people would go to be preyed upon. And especially when you're dealing with content that kind of exemplifies that to a certain point. We're playing vampires. Vampires are predators by their very nature. I mean, they call them predator types, and every character has
Mm-hmm.
one. It does kind of push that, and I think that that can even bleed over to the player base as well as just kind of a way of being. How did you personally combat that throughout this journey that you've been on? Because I know it is another thing that a lot of people deal with and have had struggles with or had to combat because of it.
Absolutely. I would like to say that I have dealt with it with grace and decorum. I have not. Earlier in my career, as a storyteller and a player, I let some things slide because I'm just a girl. Um, and I am certain that a lot of your viewers will have similar experiences where someone's just pushed the line a little bit and then the next session pushed the line a little bit more and you're like, "Oh, well, I let it go that time. This is just a little bit more, so I'll let it go." And the next thing you know, you're in a situation you can't get out of and it's not good and no one is around to believe you because it looked like you guys were having a really fun time. um, there are people who will believe you. You don't need to put yourself back in those situations. My DMs are always open, folks. If you've got a situation like that and you just need to let it out, send me a DM. You need to know that somebody out there is going to hear you. Um, and we want to make this a more encompassing, safe community for everyone. Like you said, we're playing predators. That doesn't mean we get to be them.
No, that's one of our first
Um,
rules on the server and in the community is we're playing monsters, we're not monsters. You know what I mean? We're playing them, it doesn't mean we're them in real life. And that's a very, very important distinction to have
mm,
because it is a trap that I've seen plenty of people fall into. The term is character
absolutely.
bleed. You adopt too much of your character into your own personality, or it brings out the worst parts of you, and then that's the
Mm.
person you become, and that's not what this experience should have. This TTRPGing as a whole should be an experience in empathy and escapism, not or creativity, not transforming your whole personality for the worst because you're given a platform to do so.
Absolutely. And that's not to say that TTRPGs aren't a really effective and efficient tool for exploring your personality and
Yes.
your presentation as a person. They absolutely are. There's a bunch of academics who are like, is this a thing? And they're writing about it and studying it now.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Why do you think there are so many queer people who've taken up TTRPGs? Because, like, is this a thing? Can I find my family? Oh, maybe I do like these pronouns now. And it's a safe place to do so. But you're absolutely right. Don't use it as a tool to become the worst possible version of yourself, because no one's going to want to do that with you.
No. Well, and also as a quick PSA to everybody who's watching out there, your storyteller is not a therapist unless they actually are a therapist and you're paying them to be your therapist. That is not their
Exactly.
job. So if you are looking to get some free therapy out of TTRPGs, maybe reconsider your intentions for the game and for who you are subjecting to that process. As a 30 plus year storyteller, I can tell you, I'm not a therapist and I'm not trained, I'm not qualified. So if you're looking to me for answers for your mental quandaries, you're in the wrong ballpark. But yeah, I mean that's a very good point. What advice would you give to a femme or femme presenting individual who is trying out this experience, who is starting down this journey? How can they best safeguard themselves? What should they be on the lookout for? What how can we help them? Because all I want is to see more of the community growth. I want to see more people feeling safe, especially in the World of Darkness space. And I want to foster that, but there's a little preparation on the player's part as well. What advice would you give?
Ah, great question. Um, Word of mouth is your best tool. You can't enter a new arena and expect for it to be completely open to you from the get-go. Start small, start talking to people who you feel are safe. And even if you don't want to necessarily play with them, ask for their recommendation. Hey, I'm looking for a game like blah. Do you know anybody who does that that you would recommend to someone who is new? Because first and foremost, let's get the cat out of the bag. Some GMs are really good with new players, some are really good with experienced players, and that's going to be your first taste. So you want to make sure that they're good with new players. From there, you will be at a table, or you'll be invited to, say, a forum like a Discord server or a group, or hey, you should go and look at TTRPG threads or whatever. And you like read, assess people on your own, ask people who you see interacting with them and go, hey, have you played with them? Or do you know anything about this person? I'm looking for a game, or I'm looking to learn how to story tell. Do you think that this person would be good at that? Word of mouth and opinions are the number one tool we all have, not just femme presenting people, to really suss out the bad eggs. um, I would also suggest, with the advent of online professional DMing tools, read your reviews. You can drop people a line through things like Start Playing and go, hey, I see you've played a game with this person. What do you reckon? Um, and you utilize that, take it with a grain of salt, but utilize it as a starting block
Yeah.
for your interaction with that person.
100%. And I think to expand upon that, if you see something, say something. If something seems off, speak up. Like, confront the issue.
Absolutely.
Confrontation is an awkward thing. It's really hard, especially when getting into a group. But if it feels weird, it probably is, and it's worth bringing up. And if you
And don't
do
be afraid
find,
to
yeah,
leave.
if you do find yourself getting rejected or getting, mistreated because of your expressing your comfort levels, it's the 21st century. Like, you have to be able to do that. You should have a space to do that. And if you're finding yourself in a space that isn't allowing that, that's not the space for you. But I guarantee there is another one that will accept you. So don't think that
Absolutely.
just because your first experience is a bad one, they're all going to be bad. There are places. And with the advent of safety tools, with that becoming a much more popularly accepted practice, it's almost necessary at this point.
Mm.
Uh, yeah, take full advantage of those things. Be honest about what you're willing to take and not take, and set a kind of boundary for yourself. And this is for all presenting individuals, regardless of what it is. If you're uncomfortable, you don't have to be. It's not a requirement to be. Don't feel the societal pressure to put up with stuff that makes you uncomfortable. Like, you can find
Mm.
some place that you will be comfortable, and I think that's very, very, very important. Um,
as an addendum to that,
Yeah.
sorry,
No, please.
just because you filled in a lines and veils document or something like that doesn't mean that that's what you have to accept each and every session. We
Nope.
fluctuate as human beings, and our capabilities to deal with certain things fluctuates with that. So if you've said, I'm okay with X, and you rock up to a session and X is presented, and you're like, oh, actually, I'm not okay with this, that's fine as well. You are a human being who lives in a world that throws you for loops constantly. So if anybody at your table is not okay with you expressing actually, I'm not all right with this, they've got the problem, not you.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. What advice would you give to somebody who's starting out in storytelling? Because I do think it is a very bold and courageous thing to do, and I compliment and support anybody who takes that leap. Again, based off my Gen Con experience, I worked with a lot of first time storytellers in my group who were really being thrown into the deep end of the pool by doing it at a convention for the first time, let alone the first time in a new system, first time TTRPG, all these things. What advice would you give to somebody who is kind of apprehensive but has an interest in doing this?
Do it, but be kind to yourself. You didn't learn how to drive a car the first time you did it. You couldn't take a step walking the first time you tried it. I bet your first time cooking a new meal wasn't a superb success. So be gentle with yourself. Um, mm, I guess if you've decided that this is what you want to do, um, make sure that you have an understanding of the primary rules, just the primary ones. It's your table, you get to run it how you want. And if at all possible, pick up a pre published Jumpstart. It's generally got pre generated characters for you. So you can go through ahead of schedule and look at the characters and go, okay, this means that. And they've got this discipline. Oh, and it means that. Okay, cool. Um, don't overthink it though.
Yeah,
Our own brains are our own worst enemy.
yeah,
Just do it.
that's what I always
Yeah.
say. Just do it. There's no way that what you're doing is wrong if you and your
Nope.
players are having fun. Rules,
100%.
lore, all of this. It does not matter if you and your players can just walk away from the experience saying you had a good time. Also, I've found that there is a lot of value to just being honest and communicative with your
Mhm.
players, telling your players, this is my first time with this system. This is my first time storytelling. This is my first time, whatever. If you tell them that you're new, you will earn an extra level of forgiveness, an extra level of understanding from your players because they've all been there. And again, if they aren't going to give you that, those aren't players you want to run for. There are
Yeah,
players that will give you that you do want to run for, but it's a lot easier than you think, is what I like to say. It seems scary, it
yeah,
seems terrifying, but it's a lot easier than you think. If you have a mind for creativity, if you have an idea in your head, if you have a willingness to keep learning and pursuing and realizing that even after 30 plus years, you're still learning and you're not perfect, uh, you can do so much with this and have so much fun with this and enjoy it
mm,
and go so far with it. But yeah, I think everything that
absolutely.
you said is absolutely right on point and fantastic. So one of the things that people find most terrifying about the world of darkness or most overwhelming is the lore. What relationship do you have with the lore? It seems like you studied quite a bit in advance, not just mechanically, but if you're saying you got all the books, like I can see behind
Yeah.
you, I have my own shelf right over there. What is your relationship with the lore? How do you use it in your games? What's maybe your favorite piece of lore or pieces of lore? Let's talk lore for a little bit. How do you feel about it?
I love it. I love it so much. But because a lot of the tables that I will run games at are brand new players, we're bringing them into V5. They are aware that there is a wealth of lore out there, but they're not necessarily going to get the buzz that maybe a more experienced player will have. I'm pretty select with the lore snippets that I pull in. I'm running a campaign, a V5 campaign set in Berlin. Um, all new players had never played before. And so I'm running it very, you are new to Berlin, you don't know what's here, you're uncovering things, which allows me to kind of integrate rules and snippets of lore that are specific to their backgrounds and where they currently are. Um, but now that we've been playing for about 18 months, I'm like, here's a droplet of some lore in the ocean, and here's a thing that you didn't know, just to see kind of what hits with them. That being said, when I run games for much more experienced players, oh, it's on like Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
You are getting the entirety of Beckett's Jihad Diary thrown at you because you should know this stuff.
Right.
Um, oh, what's that? You want to play an elder? Oh, give it
Oh,
to me.
let's
I'm going to give
go.
you all the history.
Let's go. What is your
Yeah.
favorite like piece of lore or location or character? Like what really do you find that is the most exciting bit for you?
It's such a smorgasbord. I don't know. I probably have to say, at the moment, I'm researching a very not well known character. Um, and just the sheer lack of knowledge about them is making me really deep dive into stuff. She's a Samitsi. That's kind of all we know about her. And she's very, 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 very old. Um, and there's 3 entries across the entirety of the books on her, and it's like a line or a footnote.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, diving into that and then tracing the history of what was happening in the world at the time, like not the world of darkness, the actual world, and trying to create a timeline that spans centuries of this person who just pops up here and there and go, but she was there, and why is she here now? And what is she doing? And no one knows what she looks like. So how did you know it was the same person? Those sorts of hunts um, take up far more time than I care to admit, but are soul feeding. I love them so much. Um, but that was a really long-winded way of getting to this. The Bahari are my loves and always will be. I'm just about to finish playing a Bahari of a 3-year campaign, and she's a little Nosferatu girl, and she's screwed up, and the Bahari has made her even more screwed. And I love them. I love the fact that any law that exists has to be taken with a grain of salt because I mean they're their own worst documenters. They're an oral tradition, and what we think has been written down in Revelations of the Dark Mother probably has nothing to do with them at all.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
just love them.
Well, in Revelations of the Dark Mother, I'm happy to say, is being republished by fifth edition
Yes.
by World of Darkness. So it's really great that that material is going to be accessible to people because I know we have a lot of Bahari fans in our community who want to learn more. And I think when it comes to lore from World of Darkness, it is a benefit and a flaw in the fact that they have created this massive, really well fleshed out world, but there are so many pieces where there are just huge, gigantic gaps. And I'm a lore junkie myself. I'm huge on it. I love it. I incorporate it as much as possible. But I also do find it frustrating when they introduce me to a concept and I never get the payoff from it, or they bring in a character and it's
Mm.
brief and I don't get the full layout of it. And I know, and bring this up at almost every interview. Yes, rule of thumb is that storyteller can do whatever they want. They can fill in whatever gaps they want. They can come up with whatever they want. But for some of us, I want to know what they were thinking. I want to know where their head was at when they created this thing. I want to know all of the details
Mm.
of what happened in Vienna and Prague instead of just a paragraph that just says, "Oh yeah, the pyramid fell," or "Oh yeah, Hardestat was killed." I'm like, "No, tell me everything. I need all of it."
Who, when, where, why?
Yes,
I want names. I
who
want
was there,
details.
what did they do, what were they
What
drinking,
car were they
what yeah, I
driving?
want everything because you're giving me, it's like a tease. You're teasing me with an incredible story and giving me less and less of it. And I've found that in 5th edition, especially, they're particularly bad about that. They have left way more up to your own imagination and your own. Like, they've given us freedom. Great. We've always had that. I want to know what you are thinking, where you're taking this story. I want to know what you pictured it as, because that's what I'm looking for. And I know that's not everyone, but give it to me at least, please. Um,
It is
it's
a blessing in that when you're presenting Vampire to new players and yeah, the Chantry fell in Vienna. If they come to you afterwards and they're like, "So what happened? I was playing a Tremere. I want to know what happened." You're like, "I guess you'll have to go and make your own conclusions." And then you see them 3 years later and they're running their own games
yeah,
because they fell down the rabbit hole that is the Tremere. Um, and now they are running their own games to fill the gaps. So, like,
yeah.
that's delicious. But for those of us who have been playing this game for a while, you're like, you get me to the edge and you just keep edging me. Why are you like
Why?
this?
Why are they doing this to me? Like, why? So I want to talk about the system transition, because it sounds like you did
Mm.
play 3rd edition, also known as 20th anniversary, or maybe some of the older editions. Hence, what did you think about the transition to 5th edition? What do you like about it? What do you dislike about it? What do you wish they would change, or what are you hoping is the future of it? Like, I'd love to hear your thoughts about 3rd/20th versus 5th, and what you like more about 5th, or what draws you more to 5th than 20th or any of the other editions.
Absolutely. So by the time 20th edition came around, the lore was so freaking deep that you had so many hooks. And I quite clearly live for that shit. Um, you had a wealth paved by those who came before you, and you could just cherry pick whatever you
Yeah,
wanted. Um, and there was a lot of opportunity for yes and for people who had read other books that you hadn't maybe been able to pick up. Love that. I love the improv backed by documented evidence that comes to a table with a bunch of players who have engaged with older editions. In hindsight, having been so deeply embedded in V5 now, it was a really complicated system. It was really complicated, and trying to bring in a brand new player, let alone someone who had never played TTRPGs before, it's super daunting.
yeah,
Yes, I sit with all of these books behind me, but I still remember coming to my first table and going, I have no idea what is going on. You've plonked a character sheet in front of me. I don't know what any of this means. I have to read 5 books just to be able to play this game. Because let's face it, you can't pick up the 20th edition core book, huge as it is, and just go with it. You
yeah.
can't. Um,
It's gonna leave you with more questions than answers, I swear, at the end of
exactly.
it. So yeah, absolutely.
Exactly, and things will come up in game, even in a one shot where you're like, I don't understand why are we making that ruling? I accept your ruling because you're the storyteller, but I don't understand why. So I can't apply that knowledge. It's just a random fact now that's floating around in the ether that is my brain. Um, and so, unpopular opinion time. V5 is a far superior system. Thank you. It's out in the world.
I I couldn't agree with you more, only from the perspective of teaching. Primarily from the perspective of teaching, because
Mm,
there is this revolution that is happening in gaming across the board. It's not just World of Darkness, but the 5th edition revolution is what I like to call it,
yeah,
because D&D did it, World of Darkness has done it, there's plenty of other systems where 5th editions as a whole are the introductory edition for a new generation. Like, I
yeah.
do consider myself a elder statesman of World of Darkness. I've been at this for far too long, if there is such a thing. But I want new fans. I want the legacy to continue. When the
We
Gehenna
need
book
fresh
came out,
blood.
yeah, when they ended the universe before Chronicles of Darkness came, my heart was shattered. It
Yeah.
crushed me. And when they introduced, oh, World of Darkness 4th edition, little did we know it wasn't World of Darkness, but they had called it that at the time. I was devastated when I picked it up and saw that it wasn't the same. And
Mm,
so I want it to continue. So if that means simplifying the rules, if that means getting rid of bloodlines, if that means doing all these things, I'm okay with it. I would rather that we have a game that we can present to new players and say, hey, let me introduce you to the world of darkness, and they can understand it rather than being like, well, let me give you so much homework that you're going to feel like this is a job more than a hobby, and you're not going to have any interest in doing it by the end of it. Like, I would rather that's the
Mm,
case, even if it means I personally, as that elder statesman, as that older player, have to give up some things to get there. I'd rather do that than watch this creation that I have dedicated so much of my life to, so much of my heart to, just wither and die. And I
mm.
think that it's great that there is 20th anniversary out there for people who can't let
Oh,
go, who
yeah.
want to stick with it. I even consider that like Vampire Plus. So if you like fifth edition, but are looking for a little bit more crunch or looking for a little bit more lore, you can transition from one to the other, even if
Well,
it's
it's like
harder to
going back
do
to
it vice versa.
3.5.
Yeah.
You can do that with
Yeah, you
D&D,
can.
but
Absolutely. Or go play Pathfinder, which is, 3.5 plus. Like you can do
yeah.
that. That you can always go back. It's a lot harder to go forward. Like
Mm,
you have to come up with something new to introduce people back into it because they can always go back to the old source material. That being said, I do hope they release a Dark Ages or a throughout time edition of 5th edition where you can transition the
yes.
5th edition rules into a Victorian game or a Dark Ages game or a Wild West game or whatever. I'd
Mm,
really love, even if it was just one book that was just like a translation of the rules to other time periods.
yeah.
Because yes, you
Yeah.
could go play the Victorian book, you could go play the Dark Ages book, but then you have to deal with the system change. Whereas here,
Yeah.
it would just be so easy to be like, okay, here are the rules for a Victorian game. Here are the rules for a Dark Ages game. If you want all the lore stuff, go buy the old books. But if you want just the rules updated, here's what we were thinking for it. And I really hope
Mm,
beyond hope that they do it because I think it would be a really
same.
smart decision. Um, yeah, I
That being
love that.
said,
Yeah.
I do dislike my big pet peeve with V5 is not having the Sabbat as playable characters. I'm not an edge lord. I do not think that uh, playing the Sabbat is the only way to play Vampire the Masquerade, but I think they really did themselves a disservice by choosing that path. Um, and kudos to those who made Playing the Black Hand. I think it's a really well written book. I think it is a great transition from an older path based system through to a newer system. It's like that halfway point between a translation guide. But um, for people who want to play a Sabbat sleeper agent in a Camarilla Court, for people who want to masquerade as an anarch but are actually Sabbat trying to suss out a system, it's really difficult.
Hmm.
And even from a storyteller perspective, trying to take the potential MPs, STPCs that are in the Sabbat book and transition them into fully fleshed, potentially recurring NPCs in a story, it's really hard. It's really quite difficult. I have played a Sabbat campaign, and the mental gymnastics that needs to happen is redonkulous.
Yeah.
I kudos to anyone who can do it regularly. I can't.
Yeah, understandably. And honestly, I think there's a couple of factors that come into play with the Sabbat. One, the Sabbat can be socially problematic for some of their beliefs and some of the things that they do. And I know that World of
Mm.
Darkness, especially in 5th edition, has tried to be very conscientious about that kind of stuff. They've made some pretty severe changes to what was the
Absolutely.
original lore and needed changes. I will say
Oh
needed.
yeah.
Like what they did to freshen up Ravnos was important. What they did with Banu Hakim was important. Like these were
Mm,
changes that needed to happen for cultural acceptance and to not be
100%.
outrightly offensive. Uh, that being said, I wonder if a part of them doesn't know where they want the Sabbat to go from here, what they're doing with the Sabbat anymore. Because in some
Mm,
ways, the Sabbat mission is finished, so to speak. But in other
yeah.
ways, it's not. And I don't know if they want to declare one way or another. Also, I have found that in the past, in my experience, Sabat mains tend to lean towards a specific type of player, and that particular player is not one that I personally want to have in my community or in my games specifically. But there are also players who play Sabat with so much class and perfection and professionalism that it is sad to see it gone. It is sad to, but it's
Yeah,
like I would rather get rid of the majority of problem and have to get creative with those really good players than have a system that supports more toxic player behavior and tends to call towards
100%.
more toxic players. It is. It's like a give and a take. It's one of those I had to sacrifice something to see the betterment of
Some
something
of you may
else.
die, but that is a sacrifice I
It's a
am willing to
sacrifice I'm
make.
willing to make. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So, have you expanded to any splats beyond vampire? Have you tried out werewolf or wraith or changeling, or is vampire kind of like your bread and butter? That's it. You're good with that, or do you expand outwards? Obviously, as a storyteller, we have to some degree. But I mean, as a player or as just a fan of the product, do you go outside of vampire at all?
I'm vampire main, but I have started to write a Wraith game.
Oh, good. Okay.
Um, because, Hakata baby's gonna Hakata.
Right. There's so many stories to be told with that.
Yep. I have also started to write a hunter adjacent game in that it's not the hunters, you're playing the people who are funding and uh facilitating a small hunter group.
Okay.
So watch this space for that. It's a bit of a ride. And I do want to try werewolf at some point. I will say that some of the werewolf stuff has me a little concerned, and I'm just not sure whether or not it meshes with my own personal sensibilities. But I love watching werewolf games. And when it's done well, it's done really well. But yeah, there's a fair bit in older lore, I will admit, that I'm like, I'm not sure.
Well, I can say I took over the response or I took on the responsibility of introducing werewolf to our server when it was released, and I was not a werewolf main. I in fact avoided it like the plague in older editions. But having taken it on, I really do appreciate the changes they made to werewolf. They outright said that they are resetting the entire canon. They're starting out fresh. So a lot of the stuff you may have found problematic in old lore is not
Mm,
considered canon anymore. And
mm.
if you do want to dip your toes into werewolf, let me know because I would love to go with you on that journey because
You
it's
know a
been a wild
guy.
ride. Yeah, you know a guy, you know a guy. And for those of you out there who are watching who are interested in werewolf, check out Rage Across Tampa. That's the game I run every Tuesday here on the Twitch channel. But werewolf has become a passion of mine. Surprisingly, I was a vampire boy through and through again for 30 years. I'm dating myself so much on this show and I wish I wasn't. But I found a fondness for werewolf, and I think part of it comes from having a really great group, but also I just think they've done a really good job freshening it up, making it more accessible, making it seem less offensive as it was in the past. And I
Mm,
think that there is a lot to be gained from it. Another thing about 5th edition is it's balanced, which was not a thing in old editions. You could not run a vampire and a werewolf game side by
no.
side. You can not run a hunter game. But having experienced vampire, hunter, and now werewolf, 5th edition has found some sort of magical balance between the three that you can have all of those cohabitating at the same time. And it's very, very fascinating. So I encourage
Mm.
you to try it because it is very, very cool how they've done that.
Well, in Red Center by Night, we had werewolf and hunter running
Oh,
simultaneously because we had the
perfect.
three groups. So yeah, absolutely love the cross splat opportunities because of that.
Well, let's talk about Red Center by Night, and I'm going to bring up the web page here for a second. You can check out Red Center by Night at redcenterbynight.net. Make sure to spell center with an R-E, not an E-R for all my Americans out there. But yeah, this website, one, is absolutely gorgeous. And you guys did a
Thank you.
fantastic job of, again, making it very clean, very straightforward, very accessible, but the material looks incredible too. So let's talk about Red Center by Night. How did that come to be? What was your role in it? Like, how did that all flesh out? Like, what is it for anybody who hasn't experienced it before or even seen the website? How would you kind of sell what Red Center by Night is?
Red Center by Night is a Vampire the Masquerade, ostensibly, game set in Australia, um, nominally in Alice Springs, so the very center of Australia. And it follows a Camarilla coterie, a Second Inquisition hunter cell, and a Bahari coven. Um, and they are all three of them trying to find out why the heart of Australia is bleeding. It takes place over 2 seasons and soon to be a set of epilogues. And we're an award-winning TTRPG stream.
Yeah, I saw that. So it says here the 2023 ARPIA Best TTRPG Stream. What is the ARPIA? And congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Donning another hat of mine, Vice President of Australian Roleplay Community. They run the ARPIA Awards, or the Australian Roleplay Industry Association Awards, where they take a look at Australian-made material and assess it for impact to the industry, quality of work, and potential for, I don't like using the word exporting, but being a representative piece of the Australian role play industry. Um, Take that hat off, put my Red Centre by Night hat back on. So I am not a judge on these awards. I should preface with
That's fair.
that. I deliberately, because I'm doing so much, I deliberately stay away from that area. I want it to be an actual representation of the quality of work that's being produced here, because the role play community in Australia is massive and phenomenal. Some amazing creators. But yes, we were up against some really tough competitors and we won Best Stream. So we basically run the Storyteller ran a couple of posts going, hey, I'm thinking of making this story, let me know if you want in on it. She got inundated with requests from people, ran a bunch of auditions and just interviews. And initially I was brought on board and interviewed to be a guest star. And throughout the course of the first 2 episodes, I became a main guest, like a main cast member. And yeah, we pivoted from having a Camarilla coterie, hunter cell, and a Sabat pack to the Bahari being one of the main groups. Um, we learned a lot on the way. Recording is a whole thing, and on-site recording, so we were actually recording in a studio
Oh,
rather
wow.
than through Discord or anything like that. We had some amazing people on cast and in the crew who are actually directors and have their own audio equipment and stuff like that. So we were really able to utilize their skills and talent and their equipment to be able to bring those production values. But yeah, phenomenal amount of work went into it, but we are all super proud of what we've created.
Well, and having, sampled a bit of it, and I'm going to actually take a deeper dive because it did hook me, it did interest me when I looked into it. It does show the care, the love that is put into this product because it sounds good, it looks good, everything looks so clean and professional, and I would definitely put it on par with, if not above, many of the more grand streams we see, like our LA by Night and stuff like that. I would say it's definitely on that par, if not exceeding, in the fact that it is very professional. It is very high quality work that you do, and that it is clearly a passion project. This was not just a, a big gaming, channel wants to put out another stream. This felt like this was a dedicated effort by everybody involved to make something that everyone felt very strongly about. And you can see that in the way that it's made and in the way that it's played and just the overall product and quality. Just the website alone, I'm saying it looks so clean, so well done, so professional that you'd think it was a movie studio and not a hobby that we all share in. That it was done so well, and that's the best compliments I can give because I'm absolutely awestruck by it. Don't even know where to come up with the words of how to describe it as somebody who's trying to kind of do something similar but with much less knowledge and a lot higher limitations. It's a really impressive thing to see.
Oh, well, thank you. We were starting to pull together all of our social media, and I was starting to form a bit of a strategy to help out the storyteller who was doing all of the promo themselves. And I just went, I'm just going to make a website, and if it does something cool, if it doesn't, it's there. If nothing else, it will help with our search. If people should be able to find us,
Yeah.
and yeah, it just ended up becoming certainly through the start of the Twitter implosion. I want to say it became kind of the home for all of our work. So thank you for your very kind
Oh,
words.
it's
I
so
think I
great.
initially pulled it together over the course of a weekend and then just kind of finessed and stuff like that. But I should say I am a marketer by trade. So
Well, it shows. I mean, it absolutely shows. I am surprised that I had not encountered it before setting up this interview, but now that I have encountered it, I'm going to speak very highly about it. And I'm glad to have
thank
you
you.
on the show to talk about it because we spoke with Rachel Wilkinson, who put together the Port Saga storyline, which
Mm,
was a huge audio drama. I love that people are taking so much creative license with this product, with World of Darkness, and making it into an overall entertainment conglomerate, whether it's audio dramas, whether it's live plays, whether it's, inspired shorts or movies. I love to see it continue to grow, especially having there been a show way back when called Kindred the Embraced. I would love to see another television show come using World of Darkness material and
preferably
stuff like that.
better.
Better, much better. Yes, please better. But I think that it is a font of creativity that just needs the right avenues to be tapped. And Red Center by Night is a perfect example of that possibility and that effort. That being said, let's talk about what you're doing currently. Red Center's wrapping up, obviously, but you are
Hmm.
working with Ichor and Ink, which is
I
a
am.
company that talks about kind of gothic horror in many genres, not just in World of Darkness, but you use other systems as well. You have a lot of possibilities on there. So tell me, how did you get involved with them, and what is Ichor and Ink? Let's just start with that, and we'll go from there.
Cool. So Ichor and Ink is a collective, for want of a better term, of horror enthusiasts. And it just so happens that we like horror games and predominantly TTRPG games. So we run a bunch of Vampire the Masquerade stories, and we just finished Jump Scare July, where we played a bunch of video games and counted the jump scares. We had someone playing Observer, which is a phenomenal game, and I suggest everyone plays it because it's just, it's got Rutger Hauer. You should absolutely. It's good. It's delicious. And I played Call of Cthulhu, and just we had some fun with it. It was a bit of a break between our usual content, but yeah, um we've done a cyberpunk Vampire the Masquerade crossover. We have a season up of Anarchs, where we're following an Anarch pack through Night City and Dogtown. We are currently recording and about to start, finish post production on following a Camarilla coterie through Night City and the shenanigans they get up to, where I'm playing a Malkavian netrunner, because you
Okay.
do.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yep, yep. And yeah, I will be running a very different World of Darkness sort of game, focusing on ghouls in
Yeah.
Melbourne.
Oh, that's incredible. Well, I want to show the page here. if you head over to twitch.tv/Ichor and Ink, that's kind of a good starting point to get into this because they've got a lot of past videos on there, but they've also got all of their social media listed under the About tab on Twitch. So you can find them on Twitter, YouTube, TikTok. I know they're out there on TikTok somewhere. They're on Instagram. So you can get linked to them through this page. But the best place to start is twitch.tv/Ichor and Ink. Give them a follow. Do it after watching this episode. Do not go away from this episode to go do it now. But afterwards, and it will be in the description of the videos if you're watching this back later, so you could just click, finish this enjoyable interview first, and then go follow. But go give them a follow regardless, because there is an incredible amount of content on there. And it looks like there's a Patreon, there's a Discord, there's so many ways to get involved, so go show them your support. I assume that when Bloodlines 2 comes out, that will also be heavily featured on that page because
Is there a new vampire game coming out?
Oh,
I never knew.
I am so desperate for this game, as Bloodlines, I have found, is a very popular entry point for a lot of people into World of Darkness. A lot of people discovered the World of Darkness because of Bloodlines. Were you a fan of the original game, and what are you looking forward to most about the new game?
I was definitely a fan of the original game. I actually came in through Redemption to the video games.
Yep.
Yep. Don't go and play it now. It's really clunky.
No, it doesn't work anymore.
It's a beautiful storyline, but no.
Yeah. No.
I cannot wait for Bloodlines 2. I know that they've had some troubles. But so did Cyberpunk, and we're still here for that.
Yep.
So did Diablo, and we're still here for that. So, good things come to those who wait? Question mark.
Well, go ahead. Yeah.
From what I've seen of the gameplay, and I've tried to not watch it fastidiously. Like, yes, I've been on the edge of my seat, but I haven't been hanging out to watch it. Trying to pace myself. I'm blown away by the direction they've gone. I cannot wait to see what happens with it.
Well, and there's a lot of pressure, obviously, going into it because Bloodlines, still to this day, is one of the best RPG games I've ever played. I definitely put it on par with a majority of other RPG games like Dragon Age and Mass Effect and, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic and stuff like that. I think it's definitely up there as one of the best ever to be made. But that does put a certain degree of pressure on a sequel being released, especially with the same title. Are there any nerves, or do you have any nerves about the upcoming release of, possible directions that they might go wrong or things that might tarnish the franchise?
I think, given the holistic approach to the World of Darkness that we're now seeing from Paradox and Chinese Room, I think we're in good stead. I think if anything, if anything's going to go wrong, it will be incorrect hat tips to the first Bloodlines. So I know we're all going to wait for the Malkavian character choice because we want to speak to stop signs. And if that isn't there, there will be riots in the streets.
Absolutely.
Likewise with Nosferatu. Like, I remember my very first playthrough of Bloodlines was with a Nosferatu character. And I did not realize how different a game it was until I went to go and play Aventru. And I'm like, oh, I can just walk in the streets? Well, this is weird. So if you don't have that sort of visceral difference because of the clan that you're playing, I think that they will have missed the mark. I know that there was some backlash with Swansong where some players were not happy with the conversation options. And so I feel like if they don't get the writing correct, or they don't expand those enough so that we as a player can actually see what it is we're saying. So if we just get like a synopsis, because Vampire the Masquerade is such a heavily political game and things get read into what it is that you are saying, and more importantly, what you are not saying, I feel like the scripting, the voice acting, and the mapping of your decisions and choices needs to be spot on. And if it isn't,
Absolutely. And I think I liked the kind of illusion of choice that Bloodlines gave more than Swan Song. Swan Song, you were on a
Yeah.
very set course. You were forced to play a certain type of character, even though it varied up and you got to play a variety of characters to a certain degree. The
Yeah.
story didn't deviate that much. You know what I mean? Like it was going to kind of
Yeah.
always turn out the same no matter what to a certain degree. Whereas in
Mm.
Bloodlines, I loved that like you got to have the full Bruja experience. You got to have the full Malkavian experience instead of dabbling in bits and pieces across the board. So I really hope that's something they continue to harness and do very well. Also, just a little more variety would be good. More clans to choose from. You know that it isn't just
Yeah.
5 clans, but we'll see. And maybe there'll be DLCs or expansions or stuff. But I'm open to see what they do with it. I'm very optimistic about the project. Now let's
Or
talk
open it
about
up to the
yeah,
modding community.
yeah,
Sorry.
absolutely, absolutely the modding
Open it up
community
to
for
the
sure.
modding community. So where, maybe the Chinese room doesn't want to do stuff, if we can mod and we can build storylines for I want the Bahari in a video game. I really want them in there.
Or the Tremere. Like
I'm
nobody's really
such a si-
dabbled in the Tremere. They're always NPCs. Like
Right.
even though Tremere was
Yeah.
my most overrated clan, I do think that they could dabble with that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the future of the World of Darkness, however, because we know that there have been books announced for the next several months. The Gehenna book
Mm.
is coming out. They've got the collapse of the Shattered Nation book for Werewolf. They've got a lot of books coming out, but they've set this pattern or expectation of one major splat drop a year and a bunch of other associated books. One, what do you think is going to be the next major release, and why is it most likely Mage, even though I think that's a terrible decision?
So yes, the most likely definitely Mage. It's a terrible idea because their paradox reality shifting shenanigans nullifies all other splats.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it, bring them in last. Um, I really want it to be Wraith. I really want it to be Wraith. I
Yes.
am so I've just had to buy a new computer because my old computer of almost 10 years died. And I'm now saving for a VR set so that I can play the Wraith game because I
I've
want
heard so
it.
many good
I
things
want
about it.
I want it so much, but I really want to sit down and thump Wraith the Oblivion onto my table of vampire players and go, game on, bitches.
Yeah, now
Now
it's
we're doing
on.
something nasty.
Well, and especially with how
um,
well they've
yeah.
balanced the systems. If they can find a way to
Yeah.
balance Wraith and introduce it, I think that would be just so
Oh,
fantastic. And it goes
yeah.
really well with this kind of pattern. Like, I was surprised when
Mm,
they dropped Hunter second, but it made sense
yeah.
because Hunter, A, was the next logical step, and B, they got to transition us to Werewolf. Like, I saw mechanic
Yes.
similarities transitioning over the process, and I think Wraith is a great way to transition into like Changeling or like save
Mm,
Mage for last. I couldn't agree with you more. Mage needs to be last because if they
yeah.
fuck it up, at least it's the last thing they're releasing versus
Absolutely.
midway through turning a bunch of people off immediately.
But then when you're looking at a product strategy cycle, like from a player's perspective and a storyteller's perspective, yes, Mage should be last because it can shatter the world. From a production and marketing perspective, Mage makes sense because it always was super popular.
It was the top three:
And
Mage,
so,
Werewolf, and Vampire. Yep.
right. And so if Werewolf didn't really hit the mark because you've got to hedge your bets, you bring in the next one, or you at least tease with the next one being, no, actually your fan favorite is coming next. Like
Yeah.
Vampire was always going to be first. Always
Always.
was.
Always.
I agree that Hunter second made a really great plan because it got us it's taking the product release cycle is taking us on a journey through the world of darkness. And so this is why I think we've had the cool guys. We've had those who hunt the cool guys. We've had the eco warriors who are now kind of like, uh-oh, it's all gone terribly wrong. I feel like next we should have yeah, it has all gone horribly wrong, hasn't it? Welcome to our world.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it does. I would love to see Wraith drop next. I'm a huge Wraith
Mm,
stan. I think it would be a fantastic next release. And I think it's a good way to test out some of the stuff they want to bring in with Mage. I think if they did Wraith
Yes.
and they did Changeling and then they did Mage, at least they can figure out what's wrong by doing it on a lesser scale with Wraith, a lesser scale with Changeling, and then have a fully polished, perfected Mage release that isn't going to break or nullify all of the other
100%.
splats.
And
Because
if
I
you
want
think
to do
of it as
crossplay. I
a
want to.
Yeah, if you think of it as a progression from most marketable through to world changing, right? You've got vampire. Um, it with the amalgam of chemistry, you can alter some perceptions, but you
Hmm.
can't really change the world that much. Hunter, you're just a little guy trying to make it through the world.
Yeah.
Werewolf, you're trying to be the world. Um, Wraith, the world, huh? Is that even still a thing? And then you go into changeling and you if you really want to stress test some of your balance mechanics for perception altering and toying with other character types, that's going to be a hard project.
Hmm.
But I think that is going to be the tipping point for mage to be able to work properly.
Yeah.
And then you've got things like Promethean and Mummy. I don't see those coming in. Maybe Demon the Falling might be interesting, but I just don't think we're going to see those lesser known, and that's not to say they're not loved, splats coming into the five mix.
Right.
I think those will probably be left to Storyteller's Vault creators.
Right, and then again, you can always go back. You can transition
Yeah,
to a third edition and play those games. My
yeah,
other worry about Mage from a business perspective is why would anyone buy anything else that comes out after that? If you've released the three pillars,
yeah.
there's nothing that the casual lover of World of Darkness is going to look forward to after that. Save that last one for last because they'll buy everything before that or at least try it. Whereas
Yeah.
once Mage comes out, people will be like, well, I have my three core books, I'm done. Like, I don't
Yeah.
need to buy anything more. And from a business perspective, obviously money is king. They want to make money to be able to continue to produce material. Why blow your wad right at the beginning when you have potentially years and years of sales you could do afterwards before
Absolutely.
dropping the last big one, so to speak. So I do think it's something to consider, but I'm not hedging my bets. I bet Mage drops next year. Like
Yeah.
that's just the obvious choice, I think. Even though I really hope it's Wraith. I really, 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 really hope it's Wraith. Well, I want to say thank you so much for joining me here today. I have absolutely loved this conversation. I hope we can do a follow up at some point, maybe a few months down the line. I want to hear how your projects are going. Maybe talk about the latest release, whatever that may be, whether it's the book. But this has been absolutely fantastic, and I'm so grateful to you for taking the time to join us. Do you have any final thoughts? Anything you'd like to plug? Anything you want to say to the community at large? Because you've been such an amazing guest, and we're so grateful that you're here.
Thank you for having me. To the community at large, thank you for being awesome people. We can only storytell because you exist, so thank you for letting us do that for you. I can only write stuff and do these crazy projects because you guys want to watch it. So thank you. Um, plugging. Oh, you should keep an eye out for Red Centre by Night epilogues. They are short vignettes. They're about 5 minutes, releasing once a week over on the Red Centre by Night YouTube channel. It just closes out the story. And if you haven't watched the other two seasons, go and do it. It's a little chaotic. It's a little mayhem. It's a vampire. And then Common Ground will start recording in October, probably releasing around November on the Ichor and Ink channel.
Amazing. Yeah, so like our wonderful guest said, for all things NephthysNile, you want to head over to NephthysNile.com. That is a great landing point that'll just shoot you off in all of the directions, kind of like White Wolf Wiki. This is your starting page. You can go there and then just go support everything from there. But these websites are so clean, so simple, so easy to navigate. I definitely recommend starting your journey there. And then you can head over to NephthysNile's Linktree, which is linktree/NephthysNile. That is also a great landing point that'll shoot you everywhere, including her TikTok, Blue Sky, booking a game with her, just all of the different projects she's working on, including to Ichor and Ink. That's a good point to shoot you in every direction. And then, of course, as she had just mentioned, Red Center by Night. If you want to see a full story with the epilogues coming and the story coming to a close, you can find it at redcenterbynight.net. And that's center with an R-E. I do have to stress that enough. If you put the E-R, you might get something completely different, and I don't even want to guess what it is. So Red Center with an R-E by night.net. And then finally, as also mentioned, the Ichor and Ink Twitch, twitch.tv/Ichor and Ink. There you can see the live streams. You can link to all of the various social medias, and you can join the Discord to be a part of that community. But again, thank you so much for being here. This has been a wonderful conversation. I really loved hearing your thoughts about femme and femme presenting individuals in gaming. I think it's a subject that is not discussed nearly enough and should be triumphed when people are able to overcome and make their way through. And I hope we can continue to see the community change for the better and be more accepting, because a majority of our storytellers are femme or femme presenting, and I love to support that. And I really hope that continues to be a trend going forward, because I think it brings a great perspective, a great opportunity, and just expands the community. This community needs to be huge. If we want these games to continue to be released, we have to throw our money at them. So let's let anybody who's willing to do so and see this continue for a long time to come. But Nephthys, thank you so much for being here. It really, really did mean the world to me, and I think it brought so much to the community at large. So go follow Nephthys. Go follow St. Pete by Night on all the social medias I talked about down below in the description. And we've got lots of programming on the channel, so go check out our schedule. We've got shows airing all of the time, almost 5 days a week on average. So you can find us there. You can check out old episodes on the YouTube. And have a wonderful night, everyone. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.